Right, Dr. Nandipha Magudumana lost her attempt at freedom after her bail application was declined by the Bloemfontein Magistrates Court. It found that Thabo Bester's alleged jailbreak accomplice is a flight risk and could facilitate another escape. Newzroom Afrika's Linda Mnisi has that story.
The Bloemfontein Magistrates Court says Dr. Nandipha Magudumana's bail application falls under Schedule 5. The schedule of some of the offences she's facing was hotly contested during the bail application. This puts the burden of proof on her to show that it's in the interest of justice that she be released on bail. The magistrate said she found no proof that Thabo Bester forced her to leave the country.
She is not facing any charges for crossing the border or any borders in this country. So there should really be no reason why she would elect not to disclose the full information regarding her kidnapping to the court.
Magudumana argued that she wasn't aware that her passport was in the car when she was kidnapped. Another passport was also found in the car that they'd been travelling in. In opposing bail, the state argued that no conditions would stop her from skipping the country.
The evidence indicates that she does not really need a passport of her own to leave the borders of this country and to travel across borders, because this passport that was confiscated had no indication that she crossed any borders legally between March 2023 and April 2023 when she was arrested. But she crossed a few borders with the case number 5. It's a good indication that she has the necessary means, the know-how to leave the country.
Magistrate De Lange says there is a chance that Magudumana could commit another crime.
By allowing the applicant to go out on bail will enable her to, yet again, try to facilitate another escape if she wants to. If one looks at the evidence that the state has, the applicant was the main role player in facilitating the escape of case number 5. If she's out on bail, nothing will stand in her way. She will have access to all the necessary information and people to facilitate another escape.
This appears to be not the end of the road for Dr. Nandipha Magudumana, whose application at the Supreme Court of Appeal is still pending. There, she wants the court to overturn the Bloemfontein High Court ruling which dismissed her application to declare her arrest unlawful. But in the meantime, in this court, she'll be back alongside Thabo Bester and their co-accused on the 11th of October. For Newzroom Afrika on Channel 405, I'm Linda Mnisi at the Bloemfontein Magistrates Court.
Right, let's now unpack this further. We're joined by IRS Forensic Investigator Chad Thomas. A very good morning to you. Thank you so much for your time. I mean, interesting outcome in court. Magistrate Estelle de Lange saying that it was in the interest of justice not to permit Dr. Nandipha Magudumana's release, saying she wasn't a suitable candidate for bail. Surely this was an outcome that didn't come as a surprise.
Very good morning. The magistrates articulated it perfectly. Everything that we've been saying, we've been highlighting in regards to this ongoing saga, she was able to put into words. One has to look at how this audacious plan and execution of the escape of Thabo Bester took place and who the role players were. The fact that they were captured outside of South Africa, that they'd passed through several countries to get to that other country, is indicative of the amount of effort, planning and funding that went into this whole escape plan, together with the contingency plans should they ever be found out. So the learned magistrate was very correct in saying that she knows how to execute such a plan. She knows how to address issues that may be stumbling blocks. She's done it before, she can do it again. And she has the means, the motive, the opportunity, but most importantly, considering the amount of evidence that stacked up against her, there's also the issue of her not wanting to stand trial, because if she's not going to cut a deal, she's looking at a very, very long term in prison herself.
I suppose the deciding factor used to prove that Dr. Magudumana is indeed a flight risk is the fact that she didn't even use her passport when she crossed at least 3 different borders, evidence indicating that she doesn't need a passport of her own to leave the borders of South Africa or even travel across borders. In trying to explore the different strategies used to mitigate the risk of Magudumana evading trial, what does this factor highlight about her means and know-how to leave the country?
So normally in a high-profile case where somebody is granted bail, there are very strict bail conditions. They have to surrender their passports. They have to report to the police, often once a day, sometimes once a week. But those bail conditions are set in place because they may pose a flight risk. The difference here is she does pose a flight risk. She has left our country's borders. She has used other passports. So in her surrendering her passport and having to report to the police if she had strict bail conditions could be nullified simply because she knows how to play the system. Like I've mentioned previously, the amount of planning that went into the execution of this audacious escape is unbelievable. The amount of funds that needed to be raised and the amount of contacts that needed to be made is unbelievable. We see that there's quite a few people that have been charged, but not everybody. All the actual players that have been involved in arranging passports, arranging safe houses, arranging vehicles, raising funds, they haven't all been taken into custody. This is an ongoing investigation. And one thing that what we also need to take cognizance of is that she could have also interfered with witnesses should she have been released.
Yeah. What about the claims of kidnapping? I mean, those were completely thrown out of the window.
I call it flip-flopping. The fact that she took the South African authorities and Tanzanian authorities to court based on the fact that she had been purportedly abducted by both South African authorities working in collusion with the foreign authorities just makes one think to oneself, okay, fine, this is your claim, this is what you've gone to court. But a few months later, you spin it completely and you say, actually, I was abducted by the person I was involved in a relationship with. Well, then that would have made the people that arrested her or took her into custody her saviors rather than her captors. So you can't flip-flop and try use the same narrative but apply it to a different set of people. She tried to apply it to the authorities. It didn't work. Now she's trying to say that she was taken under duress by the person she was involved romantically with.
Yeah, and it didn't help that we saw images of affection the first time that they appeared in court. I mean, that didn't look at all like a woman who had been kidnapped. I mean, you're also an expert in complex financial crime investigations. I mean, we know that this case involves quite a bit of money. Amongst the allegation, Magudumana is facing charges of fraud. What will need to be established in efforts to get a sense of the money trail and the people behind it?
I'm sure the authorities are quite far down the line in respect of the financial threat analysis. I'm surprised a lot of people haven't come forward that may have been victims of the scams that were initiated to fund this audacious escape. And I do believe we are going to see more people coming forward when they are forced to come forward. I think a lot of people are embarrassed. They don't want to be associated with Nandipha and Bester. But there were definitely a lot of people that were taken. One must understand that the authorities have access to a lot of systems and they have support from a lot of law enforcement and intelligence agencies. The Financial Intelligence Center would have been roped in to start helping with the building of the financial threat analysis to see what monies were spent and where those funds originated from. The people that gave them those funds will then be interviewed, and if they had any facts misrepresented to them as to what their funds were going to be used for, and if those funds were not used for the intended purposes, they, of course, will be encouraged to open criminal charges.
And you mentioned something quite interesting just a short while ago, speaking about how she's a flight risk and that she's not willing, or she should at least be willing to consider some sort of agreement or negotiation with the state. What would that entail, and how could it help this case?
If she had to want to do a deal with the state, her defense would have to come with a very, very, very good rationale as into why she's now changing her testimony and wanting to cooperate. One must understand that because of her flip-flopping, because of the circumstances in how she was found, and because of the role that she's played from the outset of this saga, it's not going to be very easy to allow her to then become a witness, because to put her in the box and place her under cross, especially after all this flip-flopping, Bester and the other co-accused defense would have a field day with her. So she would need to have very valid reasons as well as evidentiary proof of why she's wanting to become a state witness and what it is that she can give the state that they perhaps don't have. And there's not many missing pieces in all of this. So the state may not even consider allowing her to, A, become a state witness and be granted indemnity in terms of Section 204, or B, be offered a plea bargain in terms of Section 105 and get a lesser sentence. So I think it's highly unlikely that we're going to see her once again flip-flop and get to testify against Thabo, because it's the state that will determine whether or not they want to do a deal with her.
Because what we did see a couple of weeks ago was a letter that she'd penned out speaking about how women are treated in prison, also making mention of how she suffered and endured emotional, physical abuse at the hands of very powerful people. And right at the end of that letter, speaking to her children, saying that she'll be with them soon. How much of an impact do you think that letter had?
Seems like she's reading from the same script as Thabo Bester, because when he first went to prison, one of the things he was telling people on the outside when he was grooming them was that he had taken the fall for some very high-profile people, and that he was actually innocent in all of this, and that these high-profile people had manipulated the situation and he had taken the fall for them. So for me, and I've said this before, and I hate to sound repetitive, but it does a disservice to women who are really victims of GBV or emotional abuse, or who are suffering from battered woman syndrome, because she is distracting from the fact that she played such an active role. She was on the outside. He didn't have physical control over her. And yes, the psychologist can say she was groomed as well. They can come along and say that she was induced into doing this or enticed into doing this and didn't realize the veracity of what she was doing. But common sense dictates that a reasonable person doesn't act in the manner in which she acted. And I will forever say that the more she continues with this narrative of being the abused one and being the victim of all of this, the more she's doing herself, but more importantly, other South African women, a massive disservice.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Chad. Let's perhaps leave it there for now. Chad Thomas, IRS Forensic Investigator, just helping us make sense of the bail application being denied by the Bloemfontein Magistrates Court yesterday when it comes to Dr. Nandipha Magudumana's case.